Hello, I am Cody Ellingham, and this is the Transformation of Value podcast. This show is brought to you by Swarbricks, the first law firm in New Zealand to accept Bitcoin for legal services. The Swarbricks team are Bitcoiners, and they are knowledgeable about the legal aspects of Bitcoin in New Zealand, as well as general legal advice. Swarbricks offers a 20% discount for services paid in Bitcoin. Find out more at swarbricks.co.nz/Bitcoin. Now, in today's episode, I talk with Palash, an Indian Bitcoiner, sharing his thoughts on how to bring Bitcoin adoption to the world's largest democracy. We talk about the sudden demonetisation of certain cash notes by the Indian government, the new unified payment interface and Indian CBDC. Palash also shares his thoughts on how households approach savings, purchasing and gifting gold, and the social role of money. I do hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to support the show, please consider leaving a review or boosting some sats via your favourite podcasting 2.0 platform such as Fountain or Breeze. Otherwise, on to the show.
Amazing to see you again.
Yeah, no, thank you. And where are you at the moment, Palash?
So I'm in Delhi now. I was in Dubai for a few days and just came back last week.
Yeah. And how was Dubai?
Dubai is good. The weather is changing now. It's getting a bit cold. So yeah, but not that cold because, Middle East, they don't have, that great winters as in Japan or in New Zealand or Australia.
Yeah, I tell you though, it's been quite strange lately. It should be getting quite cold, but even today, it's still t-shirt weather here in Tokyo.
In Delhi, it's starting to get cold a bit. Yeah, that's why I have this on.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. Hey, look, I'm keen to talk today about a couple of different topics. So, when we met in person a couple of weeks back, you really inspired me with some of the stuff you were talking about in terms of how you see Bitcoin from an Indian perspective and sort of the role it plays in such a large country. And I think it would be fair to say maybe that there's not that much coverage or focus on Bitcoin in places like India in the mainstream narrative of Bitcoin. Right. It's very much a US-centric, mainly English-centric thing, but we all know that it's money for everyone. And so I guess I'm keen to maybe start with a bit of your story, who you are, Palash, and I guess Bitcoin in India, if we can get to that topic today, please.
Well, sure. But, before talking about myself, I would just like to introduce myself as a normal human being working my ass off to earn the money, as we call it. Yeah, but it's basically a mode of exchange or a medium of exchange that we're using. And now with the decentralized money coming into picture, there are a lot of things which are happening. So talking about my background, I am a major in finance, and I've worked with companies like Fidelity and American Express. So you can understand where exactly I'm coming from and how I understand money in a different way as compared to people who are working in non-finance jobs, or maybe, people who are working in different other sectors of the industry. So, yeah, that's a small thing about me. Coming on to, the market size of India and what exactly is the position of this decentralized money in India. It's very challenging in my country, especially because first of all, the government, they don't support the decentralized form of currency very much. So it's still in a very, darker side of the gray zone. It falls under the gray area. It's not banned completely, but it's not legal as such. So it's a very gray zone, but on the darker side of it. So you can say that.
Yeah.
And because of that, a lot of people are hesitating to use and transact in Bitcoin. That's the biggest challenge. However, I would, I think I would like to, take advantage of your platform right now to basically discuss a couple of, very intriguing points, which I think should be discussed every time, which no one generally discusses. Everyone in the community, if you think they talk about orange pilling, the normies or the general public. But if you think about from the perspective of a layman, a person who's a small maybe a supermarket owner or a person working in the supermarket. Let's suppose I just go to a supermarket and talk to that guy, the manager. I try to orange pill him, and then after that, maybe I try to gift him some sacks, maybe, right? But what good or what use will he have if I cannot handhold him into the ecosystem? So I think that is the most important thing. And education is the top priority, which I think everyone in the community should focus on, because without the education of what exactly this, decentralized or a money which cannot be corrupted, I think that is something which everyone needs to understand better first, and then only they'll be able to switch it. Because see, if I'm let's say a daily wage earner or a person who's doing a blue collar job, who doesn't understand Bitcoin or or any form of money, what will I want out of my life? I would just simply want to go to work, earn for my family, provide the best things and the youth and the resources to my family. Maybe go for a vacation if I'm at that level, right? And I think that's it. I just want to be happy in life. That's the whole motive of a general normal human being. Not everyone can be a saint, or not everyone can become a freedom fighter kind of person who's fighting for a cause to bring that global financial change, like you or a lot of other people in the community are doing. But we need to understand that aspect as well, that at the end of the day, we are social animals, we are human beings, and we need to live in a society where everyone understands the same language. If you come to India and if you talk to a bunch of people who doesn't understand English, you will not be able to express yourself properly, right? So it's the same way, if you compare Bitcoin with language, you can say, going to Japan and don't know Japanese, right? Or talking to people in Japan in my, home country's language, maybe Hindi or whatever. There are several thousand languages in India. So it's a very, difficult situation at that point of time when you try to make someone understand about Bitcoin, but he doesn't understand the concept of money. So he needs to, or any person needs to understand that basic core, you can say the formula of money, how exactly it is derived, what value are we preserving or we storing, and what values are we exchanging. So I think these are the, points of focus which, people should understand.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Just diving into that a little bit, how would you describe, and obviously India is a huge country, with over a billion people, but in general, how would you describe your understanding of the cultural relationship to money, wealth, savings? How do people either from your area or more widely within India, how do you feel you could describe that relationship?
If you talk about India as a country, they definitely understand what saving money is, and that's why during the GFC back in 2008-9, India was the only country which survived that financial crisis. Not to that extent we were hit, but not to that extent. And the only reason because we had great household savings. So generally. You can say women in India, they have a very good habit of saving money every month, right? This is what they do here. And the second best form that they think is saving in terms of gold. So gold jewelry and gold ornaments is something which women love here in India, and I think if you go to any household in India, like an average middle class family or an average person, you would find gold in that particular family, and it would be stored. The women will be the owner of that gold, right? And that is how they understand that, because it has been a proven form of money since a very, very long time, maybe more than 5,000 years. So they do understand it better. They can see, they can hold it physically, and they can wear it, and that's what they love, right? We cannot use it in a form of an ornament, right? Unless we have a hardware wallet.
Yeah, just drilling into that, Palash. So I know this is sort of perhaps what would you say, a stereotype in a sense, but I know in Japan certainly the historical stereotype is that within the family, the husband or the father is the worker, the salary man, and the wife looks after the household finances. That's sort of a classic stereotype, which I think isn't as relevant today as it was, say, 40, 50 years ago, but certainly that cultural idea of, the household, everything within the walls of the house being run by the wife or the mother, certainly is something that we have here in Japan. And I'm wondering, within India, you mentioned, women love the gold. They are maybe responsible for that side of things. I mean, is there certainly that, would you say there's that aspect that the household finances and that kind of savings aspect is more for the wife and that sort of female side of the family, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in India as well, it's I think more or less on the same thing, on the same side that men are generally working, and women are basically taking care of the house and the family. But I think now, because of, I think, the cultural shift towards the Western side, I think the same is happening in Japan, as you mentioned, and the same is happening in India as well. Now, nowadays, both men and women are working, right? But yeah, still the finance or the control of the house is still under a woman. It's
It's interesting because you're right. The way it's sort of come through is very very much a Western thing, and arguably it's actually a very fiat thing for women to enter the workforce like that. And it's almost I sort of you may have noticed a hesitation in my voice when I talked about it, but certainly it's it's been many decades now in New Zealand. But I mean, I know certainly for my grandparents back in New Zealand, it was always like that. My grandfather worked, and my grandmother had the family and looked after the house. And so we've moved a very far from that. But in a place like India, that changes the question though, because it sort of implies that this Bitcoin story, it very much needs to take on the language and the way of communicating that responds to what the wives and the homemakers are looking for. And so it's a very different way of communicating than, say, Bitcoin maximalist Twitter, which is a very different space. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a totally different space, and that's what I was telling you. Initially, that as a human being, as it doesn't matter whether I'm from India or from any part of the world. I want to live a simple, happy, and prosperous life. I want to give the best to my children, pass on the best things that I can do for my family. Provide the best to them, and that is what will make me happy. Because see, at the end of the day, money is basically a tool to get you in a more comfortable zone. Maybe sometimes make you happy, even though we say that money doesn't buy you happiness, but still it can buy you crazy ass happiness if you have a lot of it.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, of course, there is a shift, and especially talking about India, I think the landscape is very different. Because if we are able to tap the Indian household or the women of India, I think that's where the game-changing thing will be, when all of the money flowing into gold from the household savings will start flowing into Bitcoin. So I think, yeah, that's a very secret sauce to tap the Indian, Bitcoin market, or the Indian market, if you especially want to get hold of, the people.
Yeah. What's the mechanism in terms of gold, for example? How does that work? Do you find there's a lot of local gold dealers, or do people buy paper gold? Like, how does gold work in India?
Mainly, it's the gold jewelers. There are a lot of shops nearby. Everywhere you can find gold jewelers here. They're certified jewelers, certified by the ISO standards. So you can just go and buy gold over there physically. There are two forms of investing or saving, I can say, which generally people do. One is the pure 24 karat gold, which is generally stored for long-term investments. The other one is making jewelry. But India has a culture and tradition where during weddings, or maybe during birth of a child, or birthday parties, or different family functions, there is a tradition of gifting gold to your loved and dear ones. So that is what people generally do here. Let's suppose there is a family, or family wedding, or a wedding in my family where maybe my cousin is getting married. I would go and gift him gold, some gold jewelry, maybe a ring, or a locket, or whatever it may be. So that is something which becomes a form of saving and investment. So it's a gift as well as it's an investment for them. And they understand it better because they had been seeing it all through their lives. You cannot change, the narrative, right? In maybe a decade, which has been going on for several thousand of years, right? There needs to be a very big shift to change the narrative from saving in, gold, to saving in Bitcoin. Like very recently, I heard a couple of years ago, after COVID, after the COVID lockdown, there was a couple in India itself. I think they're based out of Canada or somewhere, and they, decided to the family decided to gift the children in Bitcoin, not in gold. So I think that was the first, and that was, I think, a headline as well in some news outlets. So
Yeah.
now the narrative is shifting when people are starting to understand that maybe one or two people are doing it, or one or a couple of families are doing it, but slowly and steadily, I think this is something which is going to change, because I understand that let's suppose when I was born, or when you might have been born, uh, we didn't see television or phone or smartphones like the way they are right now. And when our kids will, see all these things, they are born with all these things, right? So the mindset that they have is totally different from what we have. And every generation, the mindset is basically shifting towards technology, towards digital payments, towards, the internet. So it's a vast, it is something which will take a lot of time, is what I believe. As
Yeah.
compared to the Bitcoin maxi community, which thinks that it might happen overnight, and the price will shoot. Common man doesn't have to worry about the price of Bitcoin. They just want to work.
And enjoy their life. Yeah. Well, something you said that's quite interesting is that social function of money and this kind of gifting culture, which I think, I mean, maybe say in New Zealand, we would be familiar with getting a little bit of money from your grandparents for your birthday, or some birthday money, that sort of thing. But it's not really a major social function. It's sort of almost, I wouldn't say taboo, but to give someone money, it sort of is in this funny space. It's sort of, you for example, to give a wedding gift, often you give an actual gift, an item such as a piece of I don't know, homeware or something, right, for the kitchen, that sort of thing, as opposed to cash outright. Whereas in India, and I know Japan, different places, there is these social functions of money. And even, for example, in China, you have these festivals where you burn this kind of fiat, these kind of paper notes. They're not real money, quote unquote, but the money for the dead, and so you burn it, and it becomes available to them in the afterlife. You have these kind of rituals and social functions of money. And I wonder, because Bitcoin lacks that tangibility, it's sort of challenging right now to do that. There are some things out there like open dimes, small kind of one-off hardware wallets and things like that.
Seen
but
that.
They're not necessarily easily identifiable or not very easy to understand, and so I think maybe there is an opportunity there to develop some of that gifting culture, and so Bitcoin can fulfill that social function, which is clearly there in many societies around the world. And it's just, how do you make it easy and almost tangible somehow, so that it feels like, maybe even if it's a seed phrase written on a gift card, something like that. Well, I don't know.
So I have a very funny story regarding Open Dime. I tried to gift one of my friends Open Dime on his birthday, and that was like quite a few years ago, like back in, I think, 2018. So I tried to gift him an Open Dime, and he was like, "What will I do of this? This throw a party for me, and that'll be fine." So I think, and again, we come back to the same the same point zero, or the same platform, that education is the most important thing. And now he's like, I should have taken that Open Dime from you.
Oh, did he not take it? Did he give it back?
No. Yeah, he gave it back. He was like, what will I do of this? I don't want this.
Yeah.
So exactly, education is something which is very necessary,
Yeah.
But when I told him that, just keep it, and, it will grow over time, and this is my gift to you, he was like, no, man, I don't want this. Just throw a party for me. That'll be enough. And I was like, fine. That party costed me more than, the Bitcoin which was there in that Open Dime. But yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, I mean, I guess on that note, people not understanding it, often experience can be the best teacher. And I wonder, what is the lived experience right now in India in terms of inflation, in terms of monetary stability? Has there been any challenges or things that have been a teacher for people around money?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of examples. Like, the biggest example I can give of myself is, so back in 2016, I remember it was November 2016, 8th or 9th of November, and 8 p.m. in the night, our Prime Minister came on television and he said that suddenly, all the banknotes will be banned, and there's a demonetization that is happening in our country. And overnight, everything turned, everything changed. So that was the biggest trigger for me, because, at that point of time, I was in office, I was working. I just ended my shift at 9 o'clock that time. And, I came out, I went for dinner, and no one was accepting my 1,000 rupees note. And I was like shocked. I saw the television and I was like, what the hell happened? My notes are worth nothing. It's a piece of trash. So that is, where my eyes opened, and I think a lot of people started to think in that direction. And very recently, when they introduced a 2,000 rupees note back then in 2016, after that, again this year, the same thing happened. That 2,000 rupees note, they have now completely banned it. It's out of circulation, and they have again done the demonetization. Nobody's talking about it. But just try and understand, people who are saving money, who are working for money, so-called money, which they generally don't understand. And, that piece of paper is suddenly banned right there. What do you do? And that's where, Bitcoin comes into picture, that your Bitcoin cannot be confiscated, not be demonetized. It cannot be banned overnight. Or even if it is banned, there are still ways you can do some P2P, or because it's a peer-to-peer thing, you can go in any part of the world and use it, because it might be banned in one particular geographical area, but maybe others are open for it. So maybe, I can come to Japan and maybe spend my coins.
Yeah. Well, that you mentioned 2016. Was that the 1,000 rupee note that got?
Yeah, the 500 banned? And the 1,000 rupee note. Yeah, there were two. Those were the two big notes: 500 rupee note and a 1,000 rupee note. Both of them were changed. Both of them were demonetized at that point of time. So that was basically, under the plan of curbing black money into the system and counterfeiting of notes. So there were a lot of people who were printing fake notes, and that is what the government didn't want. And because of that, this happened. So with Bitcoin, all of these problems and situations can be solved. You cannot counterfeit your Bitcoin. You cannot print more of it at your will or at your ease. Definitely, you can mine it in your home, but you cannot counterfeit it, right?
Yeah.
So these are, I think, some very important lessons for people to learn. But generally, people have a tendency to forget things very easily, and there is always a next narrative which is coming. So, after these things happen, there were a lot of other things which were simultaneously going on, and people just forgot what exactly happened.
Yeah. Well, I just had a look. 2,000 rupees. I mean, that isn't a huge amount of money either. So that's a relatively low denomination if you think about it. Like, it's maybe, I mean, I got here 2,000 rupees is about 24 US dollars.
That's right.
So to ban a 500 rupee note, I don't know what the purchasing power would have been back then, but it feels like that's the sort of note maybe you would use on a daily basis, right?
That's right.
And so to suddenly ban that within hours, that becomes unusable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that must have been quite difficult. What was the reaction of people against that?
So, the reaction was, quite horrendous because a lot of people lost their lives as well during that time because there were a lot of, chaos. Everyone was standing outside of the bank. There were stampedes. There were a lot of things happening. Few people lost their lives as well. So that was the kind of situation which happened because they gave a certain time frame, a certain time window, wherein you have to exchange your old notes to the new ones from the banks, and there's a 30 or a 40-day time period for that. So everybody wanted to do that, and you see, in a country with a population of 1.4 billion, it's a big challenge to do that.
Yeah.
It cannot be done overnight.
Yeah, the note was demonetized straight away, but there was a grace period to transfer that into the new money. I see.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But very difficult.
They took back the old notes and they gave you the new ones.
I
so
see.
that was the way of doing it. But again, there was a challenge. So there were lines in front of ATMs in banks. Hundreds of people just rushing into the banks trying to exchange the money. Again, the poor and the common people always suffer in these kind of situations because people with a lot of money, they were again holding those notes, and they got a hold of it easily because they had that kind of money and power. Right. So I think that was the biggest turning point in my journey of Bitcoin. And moreover, on top of it, if you talk about the inflation, inflation is definitely going through the roof everywhere in the world. And we talk about inflation in terms of rising prices of groceries, oil, or maybe daily consumables. But we need to also understand, inflation also includes, the lifestyle that we follow or that we want to follow. And that lifestyle inflation is something which no one, talks about. If you think, let's suppose if I have a $100 Android smartphone, and if I want to upgrade to an iPhone, it'll cost me $1,000. That $900 extra is, you can say, a part of my lifestyle inflation. But nobody's talking about it. That's again, something which is extra on my pocket if I want to go for that. It's definitely a choice for everyone, whether I want to continue with the same old phone or with the same kind of model or within that same range. But if I want to upgrade, I have to spend more.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah, inflation is definitely there, and it's eating the savings of the common man. It's eating away.
What would you say the situation is with the banking system in India? So, for example, 1.4 billion people, many people who are extremely poor. How do they engage with the banking system? Is there a large number of unbanked people in India?
Yes, certainly there are a large number of unbanked people in India. But I think over a period of last 5-6 years, mainly after demonetization, the conditions of the bank or the way they are working has changed drastically, and it has improved a lot. I would not say that it has not improved. Certainly, it has improved. We have gone digital completely. Uh, in the sense that you can go buy a grocery worth maybe a couple of dollars and just pay using UPI. So UPI, it's a unified payment interface. That's UPI, which the government has introduced, and it has, to a great extent, touched every common man in India.
Oh, I see.
So the payment and the banking system has quite significantly improvised. But again, we as Bitcoiners will still say that, there are a lot of challenges in that because, again, if you talk about KYC, if you talk about privacy, if you talk about, you know, getting to be noticed in the ecosystem, when you are spending anything, if you have done KYC for it, I think you can be tracked everywhere and anywhere in the world that where you are spending on what you're purchasing and what you're doing. Wherever you are traveling, you can be tracked everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that just talking about the UPI briefly. So, I mean, what is the experience, say, in the villages and different places? Is it a card-based system or is it a phone-based system? How does that work?
So it's a phone-based system. You can, just download any UPI app in your system. There are different, ones that have come up. So if you talk about PayPal, there is a similar system called Paytm or an app called Paytm in India, and there are a lot of other apps as well. But Paytm was the most, is the most commonly used app. You can just go and you can scan the QR code, make the payment like you're doing in Tokyo. So it's the same thing that we're doing here, that we're using here in villages. Yes, they are using the same method because it's very easy to I think in India the internet is quite cheap, right? As compared to all the other parts of the world, it's quite cheap. And I think that is a blessing in disguise. You can say people have got access to smartphones and internet. They have, you can say, got a lot of education because of that. They are now more open to learning new things. And UPI is a part of their learning, which they have inculcated in themselves. So yeah, it's a great learning for them, and everybody is now using it. You go to any hawker, you go to any grocery store, you go to any food seller at the corner of the street, they will all be accepting UPI in India. So
oh, wow.
If you have UPI in India, you don't have to carry your credit cards or cash or anything. You just have to carry your phone and you can make payments.
I'm just curious, what would you say is the difference, say, between UPI and a Visa or MasterCard in terms of acceptance? If say I was going to turn up to India, how much more UPI acceptance would I see versus card systems?
I think UPI is way ahead now because every grocery store you will go, or anywhere you go, maybe at McDonald's you go, everywhere in India, I think they are using UPI. I think the penetration is more than 80% in the market.
Oh, wow.
So that's a huge number. Talking about the population as well. So that's a very huge number. And MasterCard and Visa card is definitely one of the oldest and proven method which people were earlier using. But now it's more comfortable for them to just, keep a QR code on, so let's suppose there is a food seller who has his own card. He can just keep a QR code on top of his card. Anyone can come in, scan it, pay him. The money will directly go into his bank, and he can just, give you the goods that you want. So it's that easy.
Wow, and can you do that?
You don't have to carry a swipe machine for a Master or a Visa card. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and how does that work, say, just for peer-to-peer? So you want to pay your brother some money. Can you also just use UPI for that?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. So with the app, everyone gets to have his own personal QR code. With that QR code, you can just simply pay it. Or now it has also been linked with the mobile number. So you can, with your mobile number also, with, inserting the mobile number, you can just make the payment to your friends, your family, anywhere, any person you want.
Well, I guess what stands out to me, Palash, talking about that is what you're describing very much maps onto a Lightning kind of Bitcoin ecosystem a lot better than, say, a Western mindset or a New Zealand mindset towards cards.
I was about to come to that point, actually. And it's technically for free. The UPI also is technically for free, same as Lightning. But I think now Lightning fees is going a bit higher.
I'm curious. I mean, this was the Indian government put this project together. Like, who did they mastermind to bring this all together?
So it was an initiative of the Indian government. Yeah. So they have formed a specific team under the Ministry of Finance, and they were the ones who did it in collaboration with the Reserve Bank of India.
Interesting. Yeah. And I guess, I mean, we're talking about this centralized, government-led thing that is, far superior to the card-based systems and that sort of thing. And I mean, it's funny though, because the government is the one who's also led this demonetisation of certain notes and led to inflation and all sorts of things as well. But I guess what I'm identifying here is that there is this culture of using smartphones, using this QR code-based payment system, enabling peer-to-peer payments without having to have a card reader or any of that junk. And again, that maps on very well to something like Lightning. And I wonder, just coming back to the education piece that you talked about, I mean, what are the resources out there and how do Indian people learn about Bitcoin? I mean, is there much out there in Hindi or in the different languages of India to help people learn about it?
So, as we all know that Bitcoin is not a company. It doesn't have a CEO or any marketing budget or anything. It's all decentralized. It's like nature, as if you remember, we discussed this thing. So it's like nature. You can find it everywhere, anywhere, and in different forms. So the thing here in India is there's no such formal, conversion of any books in Hindi or any regional language. But yeah, there are people who are now working on to building material and Bitcoin related stuff, which can help people educate themselves about this new form of money that you're talking about. So but I would say there's a huge scope, and there's a big void which needs to be filled to give proper education in India. In fact, if you talk about, there are a lot of the new generation, they are all using the cryptocurrencies and the Bitcoin or the altcoins as we name it. They are dealing in it, doing it, trading it, but again, they're not using it for their day-to-day activities.
Yeah, interesting.
For spending somewhere, or maybe for gifting it to someone or something like that. That's still not happening. We are not yet there. It will take some time, but I think it will happen.
We're not yet there. And with the Indian Reserve Bank, so we talked about demonetisation before of the 500, 1,000 and 2,000 rupee notes. Overnight, effectively, those had to be changed and you had to go into the bank and line up to get new notes. Do you see any bigger challenges with what's happening with the Reserve Bank in India? Are there issues? I mean, you mentioned inflation as an issue, but how is that tracking politically? Is there unrest or discontent towards the actions of the Reserve Bank?
I think, it's all about, creating new narratives every time. I think COVID was a distraction, to maybe to build something at the backdrop of it. We don't know it yet, but maybe it will unfold in a very short span of time. Maybe it will unfold within this decade. Maybe it is the largest monetary switch which we will see, in our lifetime. So there are a lot of things which are happening. Governments, they do have a tendency to change the narrative very quickly, right? If they want to achieve something which the general public would not like, they would quickly do it and shift the narrative to maybe some Cricket World Cup, or maybe, if you talk about any sports related thing or any religion related thing, maybe, building a temple or the largest structure in the world or something like that. So these are the things which generally, are uh, are a source or a tool for them to basically distract normal people from understanding what is going on behind the scene. Right? This has been happening throughout history, right? This is how entertainment and art and culture was created in the world, right? Back in the days, like centuries ago, all these kingdoms, when they had the kings, they wanted to do something and they want to cover it up. So the cover was basically in the form of those, you know, art and culture activities or something like that. So yeah, there is an interest in people. People do understand everything. They are not fools. They are educated. Everyone is educated now. So they do have their own brains. They're working. So they understand everything. But again, they are lost in the world wherein, a person can just, work for himself. And after that, he want to spend time with his family. He doesn't have time to maybe go out on the streets and shout for freedom, right? Or to show that kind of agitation. Sometimes they do, on weekends they would just gather at certain point and certain place. They would just show their uh, anger. But I think other than that, they're not doing anything else. It's all a new narrative next day.
Yeah. What would you say is the relationship with the US dollar? How do people see the US dollar compared to the Indian rupee, and how do they value it differently?
How do they value it? So, well, talking about the US dollar, it has been steadily appreciating over time. I remember back in 2015-16, it was somewhere around 60 rupees for a dollar. Now it's almost 83, 84 rupees for a dollar. So it has gone up more than 40% in value. If we talk about, the comparison of both the currencies. So it has gone up by almost 40% in the last 5-7 years. Now, see, any developing economy would not want their currency to be stronger. That's again, a part of the larger picture of the macroeconomic thing, because they are exporting a lot of stuff. A lot of IT goods or services are being exported from India, and when the dollar inflow is coming in, they are getting more rupees for it. So I think the governments basically talk about it sometimes. People are also not very happy, because again, it is something which is creating a lot of pressure on the inflation, but there is nothing no one is doing about it. It's all the same.
Well, I guess the reason I ask that is in other conversations, we've broached this idea that in the countries that actually make stuff and actually export things, such as India, these are the countries where Bitcoin represents a really powerful opportunity, because there's a lot of outflows of goods and then a lot of inflows of money for those goods. And settling even a small percentage of that in Bitcoin could, massively change the amount of Bitcoin that's within the country. Yeah.
You're correct on that. Like, if we talk about the remittance, India is the biggest remitter in the world. We remit more than $250 billion every year from different parts of the world. So if we just take one industry, the remittance industry, it's a huge number.
Yeah.
But again, because things are not regulated, people are still afraid to go ahead and accept Bitcoin as a form of money or form of payment. Like if I wish to open a grocery store and accept Bitcoin over there, I cannot do it because it's not considered as a legal tender.
Interesting. So there's a bit of work there in terms of that. Do you see any positive news or potential changes to that approach to?
Not anytime soon.
Oh, okay.
Not anytime soon. It will take time. Maybe the next government will understand it better. In fact, this government also understand the power of decentralized money. But again, they see it as a threat to their existence, and they see it as a threat to the so-called CBDC, which they are planning to launch.
Okay, so there's, along with this UPI payment system, there's also a CBDC in the works?
Yeah, in the works. It's certainly going on, and hopefully very soon we'll see, in I think quite a lot of countries, the CBDC work is still going on. So I think very soon we'll be, using those CBDCs.
Interesting.
And it's all linked to the credit score kind of system. It's all linked to your social identity.
Yeah.
This is what they're trying to do.
How would you characterize overall, and again, 1.4 billion people, but how would you characterize the relationship with the Indian government? Is it seen as this kind of paternal figure that's everywhere, the bureaucracy infiltrating all aspects of society? Is it seen as a bit of a pain? Like, how do people relate to the state?
Well, I think getting work done in India is not that easy. But if you know the means, if you know the ways, then all things are easy for you.
I see.
Right. Yeah.
I think I understand.
Yeah, I think I will just summarize all the things in this one line. I think I've tried to convince the idea of what exactly happens here. But yeah, I think opening a company is a task which earlier used to take more than a month. Now they're working on it and making India a very friendly state in terms of starting a business. But still there are things that needs to be changed and corrected, which I'm sure the government is working on. Other than that, if you want to connect to the politicians or the government or the officials, I think that is still a challenge. Like, let's suppose I have a suggestion for the mayor of my city. There are a lot of things that there's a lot of protocols that I need to follow and share to my, share with my mayor. I need to go through a lot of hassles to raise my voice and to reach to that particular person. So yeah, there's still a challenge because see, the population is so huge. The number is so big that you cannot address everyone's population.
Well, I mean, is it 28 states in India? Plus, you got some other territories.
Yeah, union territories.
Yes, so right. The 8 union territories. So, these 36 entities. Overall, how would you describe though? Is it a case of big government? Like there's a person you got to go and see to do anything? Is there offices everywhere that you need to, kind of like city offices or state offices that you need to visit?
Yeah, absolutely. There are, so there is basically a segmented layer. So, our country has a prime minister, then every state has its own chief minister, and then there is a government which is formed. Every 5 years, the government is formed in those states. There is elections. It's the largest democracy in the world. So yeah, we do have general elections every year, every 5 years. And, that's how the government is formed. We do have city offices, district offices, offices of the government on village level. So there are different sections where, all these things are planned. And, if I just talk about one state in the north, which is Uttar Pradesh, I think it will take almost half of Europe's population in that one state.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of hard to run the government here. It's very difficult actually. Sometimes people criticize, but I think running a government at this capacity, at this stature, is also not a small deal. It's a very big thing to satisfy everyone in certain ways. Like, when politicians maybe, they make the policies, it's a standard policy for all the people across, right? Mm-hmm. It cannot just be in favor of one or two people. Mm-hmm. It's a tedious task. It's a task which takes a lot of time. And I think the new government is actually working towards it. It will take a lot of time. The things are changing, but we just pray for the best.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I mean, if you look at somewhere like China, where it's a slightly different approach, a very much a strong, centric, single directive given from Beijing to the whole country. And
Right.
though in the short term there can be a lot of progress made, there's questions about what that means for the long-term viability.
Yeah.
Certainly, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, India, it seems like it's still just chugging along, and as you said, it is the world's biggest democracy, and there is this. I mean, would you say there's a sense of progress in recent years, or?
Yes, absolutely. There's a very big progress. I'll say that for sure, that the progress is there. It's happening. But because of, again, as I said, population, it's not a challenge anymore. I think, every company in the world or every country in the world is willing to come to India or join hands with India because they see India as the biggest potential market. So there are a lot of things which are going on, which generally normal people like us, they can't see, but there are a lot of works, in the background which are going on. So yeah, we are progressing every single day. It will take more time because we got our independence like not a long time in terms of a country. It's not a long time, but yeah, we are progressing every single day.
Yeah.
And things are happening for good.
Interesting. And I guess finally, Palash, just in terms of what we've been talking about, this kind of idea of Bitcoin, how is that coming through in India in terms of Bitcoin communities, Bitcoin meetups, conferences, that sort of thing? Is there much of that? Do you see it growing in the future?
Well, I think it's again, subjective question because I think for Bitcoin, people are working. There is a small community which is trying to keep things alive. But I think all these altcoin communities are popping up more. So we do have all these, meetups which are going on a regular basis. But it's more of the altcoin meetups which generally people do, and that too during the bull market.
Yeah.
As we all know it, right? So, yeah, the Bitcoin community is I think, very small right now because the Bitcoin only narrative sometimes when, when it's, as I said, it becomes sometimes more toxic. So that's where people basically try to evaporate. See, I'll tell you one thing. In this, I would want to just point this out. So there are two things which generally people say that if you are a Bitcoiner, you cannot be a shitcoiner or you cannot be a altcoiner or a no coiner, right? The Bitcoiners initially, like, who are from the batch of 2011, 12, 13, maybe, they bought their Bitcoins using fiat money, right? They were no coiners earlier. Now they are hardcore Bitcoiners or Bitcoin maxis because they hold a bag of it. What about a person who is, earning an average salary, let's say $40,000-$50,000 a year, right? That's too high in India, though. But still, like if someone earning $40,000-$50,000 a year wants to save some money, he cannot get the same amount of exceptional returns which Bitcoin has given. And that's the reason why this young generation, they are flocking towards these different altcoins to basically take gains. Maybe they'll convert it back to Bitcoin or not, I don't know. But there's again a gap, right? So when I try to find people who are only Bitcoiners who don't talk about all these other shitcoins, there's a very handful of people. I recently met a friend who is also a Bitcoiner, so we were again planning to do a small meetup. But again, the thing is, the narrative is totally different. When we spoke to a few more people, they were like, okay, it's only Bitcoin only meetup. All right, I think we will see you guys next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a bit of, I think, challenge, and that's where we need to understand how we can actually include everyone else in the community, how we can actually get them on board. We need to
Yeah.
find more ways to be more inclusive towards
Yeah.
other people as well.
Yeah. I think that's certainly what I've been sort of thinking about lately. I mean, even talking about gold, it's easy to shit on gold and say, well, how are the returns on gold over the last 10 years? It's pretty flat. But when you take into account some of the cultural context of what it means, and I don't think a reality where gold, housing, stocks, and everything gets demonetized, overnight in favor of Bitcoin is actually a very stable way to do it. I think, if anything, it's a multi-decade, multi-generation movement.
Yeah, that's right. I think gold is not to increase your wealth. It's basically to preserve your wealth.
Yeah.
Gold is a instrument which will actually preserve your wealth over generations. It's not to grow your wealth. If you want to grow your wealth, definitely you have Bitcoin, but not gold.
Yeah, but just even the way it gets talked about, it's almost like, well, gold is a shit coin, and it's a shiny yellow rock, and I sometimes think, that is true in a sense, but also, no matter what happens, is gold, right? And there is just this nuance and this kind of mix of things that are valuable to people, and whether it's purely the financial value or the social value of something like a gold ring.
Maybe sometimes sentimental value as well. Maybe someone's father gifted a ring, or some bracelet or some locket or anything, whatever, some gold ornament to the kids. So there's sentimental value as well attached to it, and that's why it is precious.
Yeah.
Till now.
Yeah. Well, it's just that open conversation, and I think avoiding dogma and just thinking it's true because you want it to be true. The reality is, this is just as with anything in India, it's a huge population. Things take time to work through the system, and I think what we can agree on, most people can understand now, at least in some form, is that fiat money is really the issue here, is that there is nothing behind it. And the reality is, even with stocks, gold, real estate, there is something behind it. And so fleshing out that discourse and that kind of discussion, and at least talking about these things, is really important, because as you say, it's difficult to gift Bitcoin. Some people still don't want it, even if it's in their best interest to take it.
That's right. So that's what I said. It's more on the education aspect of it. So let's suppose we just go in a grocery store. If you remember, in Tokyo there is a tap room bar.
Yeah, I went there.
Yeah. You went there? Yeah. So we also, I went there, and the lady at the counter. So while we were just leaving, we were like 3-4 friends that time, and while we were leaving, we just gifted that lady, some satoshis, right? So just need to understand. She said that, what will I do of this? So we have to actually handhold people into the system, into the ecosystem, and that's where I think the secret sauce lies to global mass adoption.
Yeah.
Which I think nobody is doing it right now.
Yeah.
You need to handhold people into the ecosystem. We need to tell them that, maybe, lady, you can just spend it at the same place where you're working, right? If you want to, buy drinks for your friend, or, you want to go anywhere else, I think you have to tell them what exactly can be done. Let's suppose, I went to a Bitcoin conference in a taxi. I'm orange billing the taxi driver, but what will he do of it? Then I will make him understand, that this is a place where you go and meet Bitcoiners every week, or maybe this is the place where, you can find Bitcoiners. You open a wallet of Satoshi, take some sats, right? Keep them with you. You go there, educate yourself more. You start saving in Bitcoin. Whenever people are, coming from that meetup, you can just drop them back, earn more Satoshi. And that is how I think we need to handhold them in the long run, in the long game, and that is how they'll be able to understand it more.
Yeah, No, it's exciting. And look, I think 1.4 billion people in India, if we can just get the housewives all thinking about Bitcoin, we're going to the moon.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I think this is really cool, and this is the kind of conversation I do want to have on this show, because it really provides a different perspective. Like it's not the laser eyes memes and the Twitter stuff. It's
that's a cult which only a handful of people can understand.
Yeah,
right?
It's hundreds of millions of families throughout places like India who are sort of looking at what they're going to do. They're looking at their 1,000, 2,000 rupee notes that are getting demonetized. They're looking at the gold that they're buying regularly or receiving, and they're thinking, what else can we do to improve ourselves, improve our family's situation so we can have a good life and a better life for our children. And that's ultimately low time preference, and that's kind of what Bitcoin's all about, right?
Right, that's right.
Palash, I appreciate your time. This is really great stuff. If people want to follow you, get in touch, what's the best way for them to find you?
I actually try and avoid using any kind of social media as such, so I'm sorry.
No.
I'm not available anywhere. I don't use any kind of social platform, but yeah, I do have Nostr that I use. If anyone wants to follow me on Nostr, I think Bitmaniac-07 is my thing. If you want, I can share my NPub with you. You can just pin it in the comment section. So I think that's the best way to connect with me.
I agree. I think Nostra is the best way to connect. It's much better than everything else. I look forward to maybe catching up with you in India sometime. We'll come over and...
Yeah, I would love to host you, for sure. We had this conversation. I would,
Yeah, I'm really interested in the whole area, just everything going on. It seems just like a lot of opportunity, and maybe we could go watch a game of cricket or something, man. All right, bro. Well, I appreciate it, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I do hope you enjoyed this show. I am Cody Ellingham, and that was The Transformation of Value. If you'd like to get in touch, please send me an email at hello@thetransformationofvalue.com, and I will get back to you.